Jane, let's start with the case. This is, some people will refer to it as the defamation case. Some people will refer to it as a rape case. It's a civil battery trial because that's what New York State allows once you're beyond the statute of limitations. But what does that mean for practical purposes?
So E. Jean Carroll is suing Donald Trump for two causes of action. One is called battery and the other is called defamation. The battery pertains to E. Jean Carroll's assertion that Donald Trump raped her in the dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman's in the mid-1990s. Under civil law in New York, there's no civil cause of action called rape, but battery can refer to any wrongful touching that is offensive and harmful to the plaintiff and is the standard charge that is used to sue a perpetrator civilly for an alleged rape.
Faith, what's the way in this that this is likely to unfold? We almost heard definitively from Donald Trump's lawyer that he's not going to show up for this trial. The judge did express some irritation with his lawyer to say, tell us or whether he is or isn't, because we have security concerns to deal with. But how does this case unfold? What's different about a civil case having to do with battery than a criminal rape case?
You know, this is really interesting because Trump is the chaos king, right? And he really benefits from a situation where he can seize control. This courtroom today was about as buttoned up as you can possibly get. Judge Kaplan kept things running really fast. There was a jury in the box by 1:15. He kept really tight control of the opening statements. So rather than being a situation where Trump's lawyers could have gone on for days with very personal voir dire to these jurors, you've got an anonymous jury only used really in mob cases that will have no fear of the former president. You've got a judge who's controlling the courtroom really tightly. And then you've got a situation that's not going to be a one-on-one. It's not going to be Carroll versus Trump. Trump is probably not going to show up. His lawyers are already trying to seed excuses in the jury's minds. And on top of Carroll, you have this fabulous situation for the plaintiff here, where there's a special rule, a civil rule. You can't get it in criminal cases where you can have other people testify. Here, two other women and an Access Hollywood tape that go to Trump's tendency, his propensity to sexually assault women. So it's not just going to be Carroll. It's going to be Carroll plus two other women plus the Access Hollywood tape. Really stacks up for tough odds for Trump.
Jane, let's talk about some of the things that Joe Tacopina, Donald Trump's lawyer, said today. He said a lot of things that show up in sexual assault cases as defenses. And he talked about how E. Jean Carroll reacted at the time, or how she reportedly reacted at the time. The fact that she didn't report it to the police. The fact that she subsequently reported somebody vandalizing her mailbox, but didn't see fit to report what she said was a rape. This is the kind of thing that if one reads a pamphlet about sexual assault, you understand that there's no guidebook for how women are supposed to respond to a sexual assault. Lots of women do not report sexual assaults because they have traditionally been hard to prove and hard to get convictions on. E. Jean Carroll is a woman of a certain age who this happened at a time when women did not win these things if they reported them.
Absolutely. And E. Jean Carroll's counsel will emphasize that in their trial strategy, but they're not taking any chances. They're also calling an expert witness to educate the jury on some of the reasons why survivors of rape often don't immediately go public with the story. E. Jean Carroll has, I think, been very eloquent in explaining why she didn't come forward immediately. She describes herself as having been raised in a grin and bear it kind of culture. And that personality of being upbeat and using humor to get through things that are difficult is really a through line through a lot of her story. I think that if her attorneys lean into letting Jean Carroll's upbeat, very individual, humor-driven personality emerge during the trial, I don't think it's going to be hard for the jury to understand that this was someone who chose to put an awful experience behind her and move on to as best she could.
Faith, let's talk about the idea of Donald Trump testifying versus using the deposition. They have a deposition, a tape deposition, which they say they're going to use, and E. Jean Carroll's attorneys seem to think that that's sufficient. Tell me what your thoughts are about that.
Well, it's certainly admissible if he doesn't show up for trial. He's indicating that he's not. His lawyers are saying they're going to assess exactly what kind of additional proof comes in, how damaging the testimony from these other two women and from the Access Hollywood tape is, whether before Trump decides whether he'll show up. My bet is he won't show up. The deposition comes in. The deposition is terrible for Trump. He confuses Carol with his wife. He is disparaging to her. He is disrespectful. I think that is a tough situation for Trump as well.
Jane, one of the things that does come up is when Faith was just saying he confuses E. Jean Carroll for his wife. Donald Trump used, and he does this a lot. He said, "Why would I be interested in this person? I don't find them attractive," or some variation on that. It's taken sexual assault prosecutors and sex crime prosecutors some time to get the public to understand that's not what sexual assault is. Rape and sexual assault are not about attraction.
Absolutely. Rape and sexual assault are crimes of power. The kind of power that Donald Trump asserted when he said, "I can do whatever I want to women, grab them by their private parts, and I can get away with it." It's not about whether they're beautiful or not. It's about an extremely disordered person who wants to impose his will on other people.